Hi, I'm Georgia Raisman. I'm here on Front Up today with a friend and fellow writer, Peter Brace. Nice to have you here, Peter. Thanks for coming.
Great to be here.
Peter is a longtime island resident who is also an author of 2 books on walking Nantucket and a naturalist. Should I say a self-taught naturalist?
I guess so. I mean, I haven't always taught myself. Been a writer here for, 20 years and written for 2 newspapers, both times as the environmental reporter, and have written 2 books, Nantucket, A Natural History, and Walking Nantucket, A Walker's Guide to Exploring Nantucket on Foot. So through writing for those newspapers and doing those books, I learned what I know about the island's natural world.
Well, I think what's fascinating is that you've taken what you know about natural history on Nantucket and made it into an interesting topic for people who live here and for people who visit here, because not everybody who visits wants to do nothing but, go to the chicken box or eat out at a fancy place. Some people want to learn about what made this island this island. So if you had to give somebody a kind of a quick recap of how we got to be an island out here in the middle of the ocean, where would you start?
I'll start with the last glacier.
And how long ago was that?
Between 10,000 and 75,000 years ago, the Wisconsin glacial stage. The last glacier came down and stopped over our area 21,000 years ago and started to recede backwards.
So it melted?
Melted, yes. And the pile of debris called terminal moraine, glacial debris, that was left behind became the beginning of the island on what was then the coastal plain, the continental shelf, exposed at that time with the ocean about 75 miles south of here.
Mm-hmm. So those big rocks that we occasionally see in unlikely places sort of sitting there all by themselves, is that a result of that glacier too?
The big rocks are glacial erratics brought here by the glacier from parts unknown, but basically north of here. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Canada, brought here and then either pushed up in a pile in the glacial debris or frozen in the ice and melted out. Uh-huh. So all along the north shore, the inner harbor, and scattered throughout the moors, north central part of Nantucket are glacial erratics.
And as you look at Nantucket, there are an awful lot of ponds. There are these long ponds like Maya Comet, and then there are these odd little round ponds here and there up near off the cranberry bog. So what are the ponds?
The long, skinny ponds are outwash ponds, the remainder of major water courses of meltwater coming off of the glacier,
oh, that's interesting,
flowing out to the edge of the continental shelf. And when the water rose up between 300 and 400 feet, the sea level, and created the island 6,000 years ago, those water courses were dammed up and became the freshwater ponds we know the names of. Mm-hmm. Hummock and Maya Comet and Long Pond and mm-hmm. Wee Weeder and Sheep and formerly Matacasham, Tube Shoe, Fork Pond, all of those south skinny ponds.
So was Matacasham Valley a pond once?
At one time.
Really?
Yep.
It's very beautiful now as a valley.
Yeah.
It was a pond, huh? And what about those little, do you call them pout ponds?
The smaller ponds in the moors are called kettle ponds, formed by a chunk of ice left behind by the glacier, leaving a depression in the ground and sediment building up around the chunks of ice as the water flowed away from the glacier, leaving an indent in the ground that only fill up with water depending on how high the groundwater is.
Mm-hmm. And I've noticed because you have a very active Facebook page for Nantucket Walkabout, your natural history tours, that I've noticed that you often put pictures of the Sconset Bluff, which does it have striations? I mean, what does Sconset Bluff tell us about the geology of the island?
Sconset Bluff is not really a bluff, it's a coastal bank, or otherwise known as a marine scarp. It shows the only place on the island where you see several layers of sediments from glacial and interglacial periods, including the Wisconsin glacial stage, 10,000 to 75,000 years ago, the Sangamonian interglacial stage, which was 75,000 to 125,000 years ago, which was an ocean when the ocean was up over this area before the last glacial
So
stage.
are there fossils left in those?
In the
those?
Sangamonian, you
Yeah.
can find shell fragments, and you can find sand, very fine sand, called glacial flour.
It's
very
different than the
powdery.
sand that we see now and
Right.
that we're walking
not,
on?
Not, it's much finer than the
Really?
coarse sand that's on the beach. And then below all of that is the Illinoisan glacial layer, which is either buried or it's very hard to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you're actually looking at there can't be that many places in the world that you can actually see so many layers one on top of each other.
I think there's a lot of places,
Are
just
there?
not here. I mean, I think there's some places on the Cape where you can see that.
Well, so how did it come into your mind to start taking this knowledge that you had and making it more publicly available than through your
I
books?
was giving a talk at the Whaling Museum to promote my natural history book in 2012. I was the first of the Food for Thought series in 2012 at the Whaling Museum on Thursdays at noon. And after the talk, there were 82 people there, and in the museum shop, I was signing books, and a woman came up to me and said, I don't get here very often, every 2 or 3 years, but I want to say that it's a shame that not enough people know about the natural world of Nantucket. And she, went on to compliment my book and my efforts, and said she hoped that when the next time she came back, that I might be offering some sort of guided walking tour of various places around the island. And being pretty poor at that time, after the paper had gone out of business, of course I started thinking about her idea, and it took me about 2.5 years to bring that to reality.
So you've been doing this now for about 2.5 years, right?
Since July of 2015, so this is my
third season?
second full season. So you could say I've been doing it for about 2 years. Yep.
So your interest in Nantucket and its natural history is not just that. I mean, you're also active with Sustainable Nantucket. And so what does Sustainable Nantucket actually do?
Sustainable Nantucket is all about sustaining the year-round economy, and that has to do with artisans, farmers, artisans and craftsmen. They sponsor the farmers and artisans market.
I see you there a lot.
Yep, been volunteering for them for like 7 or 8 years. They initiated the Farm to School program. They have a brand called Nantucket Grown, which restaurants restaurants that use a certain percentage of Nantucket grown products on their menu get a rating of either, I believe it's gold, silver, or bronze. I could be wrong on the third one.
Are they inducing a lot of restaurants to use more Nantucket local products?
Yes, and to take that even further, they have a farm out on Hummock Pond Road called the Community Farm Institute, where they encourage people to grow vegetables and then sell them at the farmer's market, as well as several restaurants have their own gardens out there, and they use those vegetables in their menu.
I think local businesses, several of them, have gotten their start through Sustainable Nantucket, haven't they? Like Claudia Wallace and the Ambrosia.
Yep,
Is
and
one of them?
the Nantucket Pasta Goddess.
Is that right? I didn't realize that she started through there too.
Yep.
The gluten-free.
Sunnywood whales, is carved whales. Yeah, so a lot of
It's
people.
like a little incubator for local
It is,
artists and
yep.
artisans and also farmers, and it's interesting. It's wonderful. So do you see Nantucket's environment under threat in any way other than the ones? Well, tell us what you see. Do you see it under threat?
45% roughly of the island is preserved in open space. The rest, maybe another 45% is developed, and then maybe there's 10% left up for grabs. So yeah.
Is it being developed in a sustainable way, do you think, or is it helter-skelter?
As sustainable as possible. I'm not qualified to answer that with any authority.
What about the harbors and the shellfish? Because I knew you were active with the Shellfish and Harbor Advisory Board.
Yes, I'm the Harvard Shellfish Advisory Board Secretary. Most recently, I was the chairman for 5 years.
Yeah. So they issued a report on the state of the shellfish, didn't they? Not long ago?
Issued a report.
A couple of years ago?
No, we didn't.
Well, what is the state of the harbor and the scallops?
Well,
I hear
did you happen
terrible.
to attend the State of the Harbor Forum? you're not going to cut out all my. Hope you're going to cut out all my I don't knows, but.
Because I gather that they're very worried about the
Well,
runoffs
the
and the
eelgrass is
irrigation.
declining.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. We're doing our best to keep
And the-
keep the pollutants out of the harbor. 2014 January, the town enacted fertilizer regulations.
Yeah.
Enacted fertilizer regulations to teach people how to teach gardeners and landscapers, certify them in a course through the town to spread fertilizer and know how much they can spread and when.
And is there compliance? You get a sense that there's a lot of compliance with that?
As much as possible, but the town doesn't have access to private property, so they can't go on each property and see who's doing what.
So it has to be on an honor system.
Well, there's a fertilizer advisory committee to the selectmen, and they are working on ways to try and get more compliance.
The scallops are going the way of fisheries in terms of being able to be a sustainable form of making.
Well, we
making
have the
money.
last sustainable scallop fishery on the East Coast.
I know,
So
and it's in terrible shape.
I don't say that it's terrible shape.
No?
No, if it's a thing that lasts for 5 months, it's not in terrible shape. It's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Yeah. Well, we always worry about those, the eelgrass and the lack of eelgrass, and don't the baby scallops need them?
Yes. Yep. But we recently raised our jetties to a half-tide jetty, filled in a lot of the holes. It's estimated that the water flowing out of the harbor now it could increase by 3/4 of a knot, which could help flush material out. The town meeting voters approved the extension of sewers in the Shimo and Monomoy, which will help keep more effluent out of the harbor.
Oh, so there's reason for optimism.
There's a lot of reason for optimism.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in and sharing all this with me. Thank
Sure.
you for telling me about the geology. It's good to get that word out more widely. And it's always nice to see you. Thank you, Peter.
I was hoping
Enjoyed
to give a plug to a friend of mine that is related to my business. I don't know if you can get this in.
Well, tell me.
Okay, so there's a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, Joe Topham, and he believes wholeheartedly in my business. And while on vacation in Sun Valley, Idaho, he came across a winter clothing shop, and he found a display of custom-made hats. Yep.
So show us.
By a woman named Yute. Yute Mao, I think is her last name. She's Finnish. Came to Finland from. Came to Canada from Finland and then moved down to Idaho. And so he took a leap and gave her my logo and my name, and produced 50 hats. They are merino wool hats that have
Beautiful.
my name on them.
And your logo with Nantucket and the walkabout.
Yep. And he said, "Here, hopefully this helps your business."
How
And
kind.
I'm hoping to raise enough money to donate to some of the organizations
How
that
kind.
I guide the hikes on.
How kind. Well, thank you, Peter. That's very typical Peter. Thank you so much.
Okay.